on what Brian said and talk about wine style. I love this idea of the flirtatious dominatrix. I think that's what we're really dealing with here. The similarities strike me to the coffee business, where we have specific characteristics. You know, if you know your coffees at all, you wouldn't confuse Kona coffee with Colombian coffee, and all the regions have their characteristics, and yet there's the roaster has a lot of opportunity to organize style. And what I want to talk about is within a specific Diamond Ridge, Lake County, a specific AVA that has its own stamp, ways to play with style using wood and tying in the concepts and the language that Brian developed. So what I've got in front of you is, this is Diamond Ridge Petit Syrah 2010. Wonderful year, as you all know. Diamond Ridge is decomposed granite at about a half a mile of height, but also shoved into the southeast corner of Lake County, of Clear Lake, so it's a low region too with a lake effect. We don't get any of the raisoning and in the brutal western sun that can happen in some of the high altitudes. So we have the combination of full sun, no fog, great drainage, and this cooling effect. And as you can see, we get quite a bit of color and some blueberry and floral aspects. Maybe it's the ionone thing you were talking about. We call it lavender, but those are retained by the coolness. And so this is sort of one of the styles that I want to put in your head. I'm just thinking about coffee again and again, and the idea of, you know, we are offering a dependably hearty beverage. Nobody's ever going to complain about the color or the wimpiness of a Petit Syrah, and yet within that we have the opportunity to make very feminine styles or very masculine styles, or somewhere in between. And so I'm gonna give you 4 words here, and I have played around with oak alternatives to take the same wine and create these 4 different styles. The wine you have in front of you I would call purist. Now it does have plenty of oak influence. We use a lot of untoasted chips in the fermenter to get good extraction, color stability and so forth, and we put a little bit of sort of mixed toast, toasted wood prior to malolactic, but that's about it. This wine we use, because we have so much color, it's really easy to soften the tannins and get a silky mouthfeel with microoxygenation. So we run it at about 70 barrel equivalents for about a month. And that's it. Then we go into neutral cooperage for a year or so, and then we start thinking about oak alternatives to come in with the spice rack and decide how we're going to flavor it up. Personally, I don't apologize for that. I think wines, particularly Petit Syrah, cannot be made properly in a stainless steel tank. No matter how much you are skilled with using oxygen, the wine needs to off-gas, and so it really does need to go into a barrel. On the other hand, if you had paid $1,200 for a piece of fine oak furniture, like a nice oak desk from some trees planted by Napoleon, would you think the highest and best use of that $1,200 desk would be to flavor 60 gallons of wine? Probably not. And so we're cutting down those forests 4 times as fast as we need to, because we throw away 75% of the good wood, and we should be using that wood. We should be curing it, as Brian described. We should be roasting it like coffee, and we should be getting our flavors from that, and then taking care of our barrels so that they last 20 years or 50 years. And anyway, that's what I believe in, and that's what I do. I think it's a sensible way. I think it's the best thing for the consumer, and I think it makes the best wine. So that's what I did. Now, in this case, I experimented with an oak alternative that I hadn't seen before from one of your unscrupulous competitors. It's Trust, and they've got this thing. This is a barrel's worth of staves. So we're putting this in a neutral barrel that's over 10 years old. This one's American oak. And all I did was to try American versus Hungarian versus Center of France. And we used what they call the medium plus toast level. And I have all those wines here. So this is the control wine, so you can kind of see if you wanted to make Petit Syrah that was purist, so that, I talked about this last year. If you're making Petit Syrah in Livermore, it's going to have lemon zest in the aroma. I don't know why, but you can nail it every time. If it's in the Russian River, it's going to have black cherries. If you're from Paso Robles, as you know, you're going to have cocoa and orange peel and kind of a Tootsie Roll thing there that we don't get elsewhere in the state. So that's what we start with. And then we can play around with whether we want to make a masculine wine or feminine wine or whatever. So this is the purest idea, where the oak is, like Jim Concannon was talking about, that the best cooks use garlic, where you can't really see the garlic. And that's what I try to do here, to just show off the varietal fruit of the appellation. I don't know what the market is for a wine like that. I'm not sure how many purists there really are, but it's a market. And there's no reason why a single winery couldn't make all four of these styles. So now here's the annoying part, where I taste the wines and you don't get to. And it's just logistical, because we couldn't figure out how to quickly pour everybody all these samples. So I will have all of these out in the tasting this afternoon, and you'll get a chance. And for now, I'm just going to tell you what I think. So this is the way we do it in France. It's really annoying. So this is the Hungarian. Hungarian oak is pedunculated. It's the older forests. And this is the type of wood that takes a long time to establish itself in a forest. And so as oak drifted westward into Europe, these trees didn't get established in France very much to the present day, but there's plenty of them in Hungary. And basically they have higher phenols, higher tannins, and less of the spicy and vanilla and aromatic elements that Brian was talking about. So what this is your dark French roast coffee. If you want to take your Petit Syrah and move it even further to the card-carrying sadomasochistic tannin junkie market, I heard about somebody up in Oregon had a press wine. They sold it as Joe Stalin Red. It was Joe Stalin, a harsh, bitter, uncompromising red. Sold like hotcakes. So I'm talking about that kind of wine. Then Hungarian oak is what you want to use, because it's all tannin and it doesn't contribute that much to flavor, and so you get a tremendous amount of tannin framing around that wine. American oak is, as Brian pointed out, much sweeter. Has a lot more of these aromatic components, particularly. There's plenty of vanilla. There's plenty of these floral elements, ionones, and so what it tends to do is to sweeten the palate and the aromatics. Sometimes it can obscure the varietal elements, but you end up with something that's surprisingly drinkable and feminine. And so that's a fun way to play in Petit Syrah, where people might be a little bit afraid of it, and then they look at it and go, oh, I don't know. But then they'll taste a Petit with American oak, and it'll be comely and sweet and full of fruit. And, so I think that's an interesting way to go. Now, the final one is, this is Center of France medium toast. And I think, I really liked this product because it creates a classic style. And if I was going to sell this wine, I'd probably put it in a nice, heavy, deep punted claret bottle, because we have a great complexity of the spicy elements and depth. It's kind of androgynous. I wouldn't call it either masculine or feminine, but it has a classic depth to it that's totally different than the others. And so maybe it makes some sense as a group for us to talk about these, some way of organizing what our styles are and communicating those to consumers, maybe playing in these four quadrants of purist, macho, feminine, and classic. Whatever, let's get the conversation started and move towards Mark's dream that we really connect with the consumer.
Okay. Thanks, Clark. We're going to... To wrap up our enology session, our next two speakers are both from Biale Vineyards. First up will be Steve Hall, winemaker who grew up in California, I guess in a typical Greek-American wine drinking family, and from a very early age enjoyed apparently the classic red jug wines from Gallo and Almaden at the dinner table. After attending UC Berkeley, Steve landed a job as a chemist at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. Steve learned winemaking techniques at several wineries, including a stint at Jarvis as associate winemaker. He was always a big fan of Biale wine since the first release. He joined the team as winemaker for them in 2008, that 2008 vintage. Steve is dedicated to making wines that show the best qualities of each vineyard and feels privileged to work with the historic vines that are so prized at Robert Biale Vineyards. Following Steve will be the gentleman that whose name is on the Biale Vineyards label, Robert Biale, grape grower. Robert was born and raised in Napa as the son and grandson of Napa Valley grape growers. Working the farms was part of growing up for Bob. A temporary harvest job at Behringer in 1989 turned out into a 10-year post in the cellar. In 1991, Bob and his parents launched Robert Biale Vineyards, where he continues as manager of vineyard operations and grower relations. Bob is a board member and past president of Zinfandel Advocates and Producers, and is a board member of the Napa County Farm Bureau. Please welcome Steve and Bob.
Thanks so much. I'd like to also thank Bob Swain for letting me work flex hours for a couple of years at Clodoval. I was able to go back and study viticulture, and I really benefited from that, so thank you, Bob. We look at Petit Syrah as a combination of uses that we can make into wines on their own that will also be of aid in some of our vineyards that we have Zinfandel in. So we have a lot of different focuses on that. For us, when we're choosing to look at Petit Syrah, we're looking at a number of areas up and down valley, up and down elevation, and possibly in other counties as well, so that we can fully understand how we can craft a good Petit Syrah at a price that we can actually make some money at. The last 2 years have given us an indication of probably what's going to happen from now on. We've got variable weather, and I think that we're looking at situations where other varieties that we've got planted, like Merlot, on some of these wonderful soils, are perhaps kind of being played out, and the propensity of some of these things to not set very well in this cooler spring is going to be a problem for some of these growers this year. This is their second year. They're not going to make any money. And going around side by side, we're looking at Petit Syrah that actually set fairly well in this unseasonable weather. It had been in Napa and Sonoma, obviously, for years and years. Been over here, and so I think there's an endorsement, despite some of the other drawbacks that I'll talk about, for embracing Petit Syrah in bits and pieces here and there when we're doing replants, to consider that there's sometimes an economic goodness not just in a variety, but in something that's going to be utilized well in this variable seasonality that has got to be our future. We have to guess. So it sets a decent crop. It sets probably, as Ken says, on some of these soils, even more than a decent crop. Ken has some very fertile soils. He's got a nice quad system, and so he's trimmed his vineyards to what's appropriate and getting good quality from it, I'm sure. We have a little slice of a vineyard that we have on heavy soils that we wish we could perhaps put quads on, but we don't have the space. Most of our other Petite Syrah vineyards, we have other growers that we buy from, and on the valley floors in Napa, it's kind of a Biale loam series, and for whatever the hell that means, you know, it's a soil type, but it's a lighter soil. It's not full of clay, and then there's one or two bits and pieces that are on transitional soils over by Bob's dad's and mom's place. There's I think a little YOLO series, which is slightly heavier. And then we have, right behind the winery, a triangle of super heavy soil that transitions from a really nice Coombs soil to I think it's called a Bear Creek, or it's hard to tell. We're using some soil maps that are made back in the 30s. But you know, they dug a lot of pits, so we're trusting them on this. So we have kind of a classic mix of soils that you typically find Cabernet Sauvignon on as well in Napa. Just like Zinfandel, which is our main grape, we're looking at some of the same problems. Hot weather problems, we'll see some sunburn, early season raisins. We'll see some late season raisins as well, which poses a different set of problems that you actually have to deal with in the sorting table. And it's prone to bunch rot. We're used to that in the Zinfandel. It doesn't scare us, but it's a heck of a lot of work out in the vineyard to go back and forth and really keep on top of that. You know, as Ken alluded to, there's money out there that's being dropped on the ground. Otherwise, probably lose 2 clusters instead of just dropping 1. The thing that we like to do when we walk our vineyards, besides paying attention to the site and the way the grower's dealing with it, we're just looking really at those week-by-week conditions that if we checked it day by day, we'd probably miss some of these things. But there's a timeliness to what we do with Petite Syrah, and we'll do what we can, especially in a late season like this, to be able to pull in the grapes before likelihood of a big rain. Big rains are really season enders for Petite Syrah. And so when we're looking at winemaking, we're looking at the quality of the vineyard. And I'll go back to maybe some of the tannin strategies we have in the fermentation if there's time. But really, we work our tannins out in the vineyard. We like to make sure that we have ripe tannins. We have some resolution of it. We've got different ideas, but we, again, just like Ken, do the same thing. We're, you know, and which we've all done. We just go out and we taste. We get to the point where there's a nice resolution of the tannins. It's not this big, prickly, astringent Petite Syrah tannin, which is so wonderful, and it's very similar to the tannin you get in Petit Verdot. So I've been used to a tannin like that. And then we make our best guess and we pick. And then the last thing for the winemaking is that we treat it like the best wine we could possibly do. We'll do a pre-soak, we'll do punch-down fermentations, we'll do a warm pre-soak, we don't do cold pre-soak. And we'll get it around 57 degrees. We won't throw in any SO2 if we don't have to. There's an old vineyard that we do. And then we just gently, you know, punch it down and try to get elaboration of tannins. We've got this wonderful mix of tannins that are in this fermenter, and you're able to get a whole series of tannin mouthfeels that eventually do become stable after about a year, and it's a wonderful variety. So I'd like to turn this over to Bob in terms of some of the grape growing practices and comments about the wine. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have.
Every once in a while, you know, an A-plus vineyard with an A-plus grower kind of falls in our lap. You know, we look at each other and we thank God, you know, we'll take that one and we'll run with it and actually make some money on that. But more often than not, you know, Steve and I have to go out there and beat the bushes and look for these growers on these really interesting sites. Because more often than not, what we're trying to do is fashion the wine from the very, very beginning, and that is talking about particular sites from different areas, the types of soils, the climatic conditions, all of that. So we're thinking about the wine from the onset, and Steve, more often than not, has exactly in his mind what he wants in terms of flavor profiles, and more importantly to him, as a cab background, structurally, how does it feel in the mouth? So that is what we are really looking for. And I just want to dovetail a couple of things what Steve and both Ken have brought up. First, it's the relationship between the winery and the grower. It's paramount. It's a partnership. We have to be like-minded. We have to have the same goals in mind. It's not only doing the right thing, but it's doing it at the right time. As Ken was saying, I mean, that's critical, especially with this type of variety. So we're looking for very interesting sites grown by growers who are able to do that and pull the goodness from that site. What we really think is